Does every business need to be on Facebook? Who will win the battle for mobile discovery? Where should your business be, Instagram or Pinterest? And are the lines blurring between marketing channels? Welcome to This Week in Organic, episode number 14.
This week's in Organic, live from London on thisweekinorganic.com.
Broadcasting live from London, you're watching This Week in Organic, the weekly show that debates the ramifications of the latest SEO and content marketing news. Sign up to watch the next episode live at thisweekinorganic.com. Hello and welcome, I'm David Bain, and each week we'll be joined by some knowledgeable, opinionated folks to discuss the latest happenings and anything that impacts organic traffic. And as for you, dear viewer, get involved. We'd love to hear your opinion too. So just use the hashtag TWIO on Twitter, TWIO, and if you're watching live, your thoughts will magically appear in the chat box to your right-hand side. So let's find out more about today's guests, where they're from, and what's caught their attention this week. So starting off with Casey.
Yeah, my name is Casey Mraz. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado, and this week I've been following the 3-pack updates and just the continued rollout, and just seeing how that's going to play out long term here. It's been catching my attention. Great.
Okay, we'll see if we're going to incorporate that into the discussion. And moving on to Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Bland. I'm working as the consulting lead here at Havas Media Group Consulting, which is the marketing services division of Havas Media Group. And this week, what's caught my eye has been the rollout of, or the impending rollout of more ad blocking tech coming from the iOS update, which is going to be due, I guess, in September 9th. We're looking forward to that one. And not only does ad blocking kind of make, I know this is organic, but some still, to most marketers out there, that could become an issue. But it's also going to be an issue for people who are rolling out any kind of content that is on a mobile phone, potentially. So that's kind of making me think about how brands are going to respond to that one.
Well, we're also talking about the blurring of lines between marketing channels as well, so sometimes it's difficult to actually figure out where organic ends and paid begins, I reckon.
Absolutely.
And also with us today is Grant.
Hi, my name is Grant Whiteside. I'm the Product and Development Director at Ambergreen. We're a full-service digital marketing agency based up in Edinburgh. And what caught my eye this week was Google's right to be forgotten and what happened with that at the end of the day. That's been forgotten in many ways. So it's almost like a super injunction of an injunction of an injunction. And where on earth this is going to actually end at the end of the day with the right to be forgotten. It's poorly thought out in the first place, and it's going to get a whole lot messier still to come.
You almost forgot what's been forgotten, Grant. And also joining us from sunny Brighton today is Steve.
Hi there, I'm Steve Linney. I'm head of marketing for the Learning People, and we're one of Europe's fastest growing e-learning providers, providing project management, IT, and digital marketing certifications. And this week we've been kind of really looking towards our kind of content marketing channels, and in particular Instagram. So I believe it's something we're going to talk about later on. But probably the biggest thing for me is the little tweak that they've done to allow widescreen photos rather than just square photos, because we're a very kind of image-focused company, and it's definitely as a marketing team. So it'd be good to see what more we can do with that side of the things.
Lovely. Okay, thanks, Steve. Well, topic number one is Mark Zuckerberg has announced that Facebook has hit 1 billion users in a single day. But the thing is, does that mean that if you run a business, obviously your business is missing out if it doesn't have its own Facebook property? Does every business need to be on Facebook? Casey, I'm chatting to you first. Did you think it's actually essential, no matter your business, to have some kind of property on Facebook?
I do, and for several reasons. Number one, the one that comes to mind on top is the brand. You want to control your brand. You want to make sure that other people aren't using that name or using it inappropriately in a way that could affect you. Number two is obviously you can grow your audience on Facebook, even though you're going to have little penetration on your posts and things like that. The most overlooked issue or problem that people have is if they don't have a Facebook account, when they're creating content, there may not be associated with the groups that their audiences are hanging out at. So, in some cases, it makes a lot more sense to have your Facebook property and not necessarily to be putting as much information into posting if you don't have a big audience, but instead just promoting your content to the right audiences where they're hanging out in the appropriate places on Facebook. So for me, it's absolutely essential.
So the appropriate places on Facebook, I guess that's the pertinent question. Chris, would you say it's essential for every business to have a Facebook page nowadays?
Well, it's interesting. I was looking at this, and it seems that Adweek just produced a survey that was done by YouGov, so it's reasonably creditable. It says that 34% of small business owners don't believe that social media will bring them any value. So there's clearly a way to go for the billion user Zuckerberg to kind of convince some people out there, and indeed there are some difficulties. That, the effort and skill required from your average small business owner are considerable in terms of manning and delivering a professional web page, a Facebook page, which has a life of its own and a momentum of its own that you need to keep up with. So I can understand that as an issue. Also, for some businesses who have they may be small businesses, but they might have several branches. I'm thinking of estate agents or restaurants or hotels. Is it the branch owner who deals with the page, or the brand centrally that does it? Maybe there isn't a central brand owner, in which case you have this kind of dissonance of different kind of voices talking on behalf of the brand. So there are difficulties there, and it is something that does need coordination, and not everyone can afford an agency to kind of do that for them, particularly not in the small business realm. But I mean, as Casey just pointed out there, if you're not on it, someone else might well own your space. And frankly, if Facebook is a very personal space, so if you can at all present a consistent, real-time and authentic voice that is your brand, is your company, then you really can't afford not to be on it.
And Grant, do you think that it's worthwhile businesses registering their own Facebook page and vanity URLs, even though they don't have that much time, and perhaps leaving it for a while and not having enough time to go back to it? Could that be an exercise in negative publicity, or is it worthwhile in every instance doing it?
I think in an ideal world, every business would have its own Facebook page. But some businesses, just like some people on Facebook, don't put their best foot forward. And as was mentioned earlier, you've got to have to put a little bit of time and effort into using Facebook if you want to actually use it properly. So your point about looking after your brand name in the first place, I totally agree with. I think most people should just do that. However, if you are time poor, or you're tech poor, or you're not really thought about what you actually want to do it for, then at the end of the day, be maybe looking after the brand name and not doing anything with it, just as a safety measure. It's just you can only really embrace Facebook if you've got the time and the energy, and not many people, or not many SMEs. If you're just washing cars or whatever, it might not be the best thing for you. It does work. It will always work. It will always help businesses. But absolutely, if you say the wrong thing or you don't present yourself in the right way, you could be doing yourself some damage, David. I think you've made a pretty good point there.
So Steve, I saw you nodding away there as well. Do you agree that if you don't have the time to interact on Facebook, then possibly it's not the most optimum area for you to be focusing on in terms of business?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, time is probably the most important commodity in amongst all this, because if you don't have the time to put some engaging content on there, really tell a story that sells your brand in a positive light, if you're just chucking up images that aren't of high quality, if you're not, what you're saying, if it isn't of any value, then you're going to do damage to your brand rather than any good to it. So there's definitely a case where I like the idea that people kind of take the URL of their name for the brands, and maybe they kind of just put a holding section of there that kind of drives back to a website if they have that, or at least, if it is like, say, like a car wash, it says where the car wash is. So I think there's still something to be done as long as you do like a minimum of it. But if you really can invest time into it, I think that there's wonders can be done with small brands, and you can really get a personality out of that as well. Even if you're like a one-man or one-woman band working from home, you can get you can really tell a story that's personal to you in a very kind of engaging way with your customer base through Facebook that you probably can't do on other channels and on your own website. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that needs to be invested in, but make sure it's right for your brand and right for you before you do it.
Okay, that's great. So that's a few general tips with regards to Facebook there. But a lot of our viewers may be digital consultancy owners. So if you were talking to someone who owned some kind of digital consultancy, perhaps not the biggest one in the world, maybe it had a dozen or so employees, what kind of things do you think they should be doing on Facebook? Or talk back to Casey again. What kind of things do you think that kind of business should be doing on Facebook to take best advantage of the platform?
Sure. So it really depends on what that agency is doing to promote themselves. If they're doing their own content marketing and creating good resources or guides and things like that, the biggest benefit that we use it for is, again, seeking out where our like-minded audiences. For example, I'm going to use a lawyer's example. There's actually some lawyers groups on Facebook or groups that these lawyers hang out in that we want to get in front of. So we find out where they're hanging out, and then again, we're sharing the content that we're posting on our agency's website to these groups. That's not self-serving to us, which is also important. Not just, hey, look at me. That's the way that we utilize it, and really giving away that information, giving away. I can't say that enough. The biggest problem that I see is just people on social media being inconsistent without a strategy, and then also just being self-serving, trying to gain an audience by telling people how good you are.
So do you see Facebook pages in general being more important than, for instance, groups for businesses?
No, I think groups are more important personally. And if you have an agency, you're not getting a lot of those benefits of Facebook in the sense of check-ins, for example. You're probably not getting people coming in and sharing that with their friends. So you have to have a very specific strategy for your own page, which again would also be not self-serving as far as content promotion goes. But in my opinion, groups are much more powerful for what we do.
So, Chris, if a small agency just had a limited budget, do you think they'd be better off getting someone focusing part-time on a Facebook page and interacting there and trying to drive up engagement within that page? Or perhaps they should be better off actually funneling that budget towards retargeting or maybe using some of the Facebook advertising opportunities? Which one would you say is best there?
So I'm assuming that the high budget paid option is probably least attractive to that kind of audience, and particularly when you've got something valuable to say or to think, then you should be using that to maximum effect. So I don't see why you shouldn't be using the organic side of Facebook, but I think just settling on your own page isn't clearly good enough. You have to be entering into the conversations that other people are having, and to do so you have to have something sensible to say. So you need to pick your audiences pretty carefully. As Casey says there, have something relevant and useful and insightful to say. Don't outstay your welcome. Treat it like a normal kind of social environment, and make sure that you're getting involved. You can't just be a lurker. You can't just kind of post other articles that are out on the internet, although that has to a degree that has its value. I think you do have to get out there and get involved in the conversation.
So, Grant, if you're advising a business on this, is it generally better to actually interact as a brand on behalf of the brand, and you've obviously got your brand name there, or as an individual representing that brand?
I think you should try and present yourself as the brand. And it's interesting, we've talked about what people are using Facebook for. Sometimes Facebook, well, certainly for Amber Green, we've always used it as almost like to demonstrate the culture of the company. So now and again, we might repost or highlight that there's a new blog post out that we've created, etc. We're reaching a slightly different audience in a slightly different way. Quite often we just used it as the fun part of what we do. We wouldn't share this type of content on LinkedIn or inbound or anything else, but we would actually just use Facebook as the kind of like the fun bit. So from that point of view, from an HR point of view, you can demonstrate, you can tell people about what you're like under the skin without having to go into the actual detail about what your business actually does, but how it demonstrates culture, how you think, how you look, how you act, what you think's funny, what you think's engaging. It can tell a lot about a brand. It's Facebook for us. That's kind of how we use it.
So Steve, Grant was talking a lot there about culture, and he also mentioned fun as well, and it's the kind of engaging, amusing content perhaps that people associate with Facebook. So is there a place to actually try and share intellectual, factual content on Facebook, or is that not the right place to share that kind of content?
Well, yeah, I think it is the right place to share it as well, to be honest. But if we kind of use what we do to Learning People as an example, is we kind of tend to do both, really. So we kind of have content where, say, it could be a blog by Ricardo Vargas, who's like the head of United Nations Project Management, which is quite a detailed blog about what his experience as project manager is in kind of war-torn circumstances. But then at the same time, we'll post a mix, a DJ mix on Mixcloud, and then put it onto Facebook and say, have a good weekend. If you're having a summer barbecue, here's some music for your background and all that side of things. So both of them definitely play quite well on our Facebook. But what we're trying to do with it is more of a kind of work-to-live mentality. So we have essences of professionalism, but also being able to kind of enjoy yourself as well. But I think because that's kind of running all the way through our brand and our Facebook, it kind of makes sense with us. So again, I don't think it's a kind of one shop for everyone sort of thing. So you really need to take it to your brand and see what's right for you and what really fits across the board, really, because we try to use Facebook aligned with the rest of our channels as well. So there is kind of native content on there, but it's all very sympathetic to kind of what we're doing on other networks also. So on a related subject, Facebook have launched M, its challenger to Siri, Cortana and Google now, and it seems like the virtual assistant race is hotting up. So how can businesses position themselves to be the recommended product or service by these virtual recommendation services? So Casey, I mean, you talked about law firms, I believe. What would a law firm do to make it more likely to be recommended by these types of services?
So first of all, circling back to making sure you have that page and that presence, that's obviously another important reason here, because if Facebook's trying to get part of the search share and people are using these virtual assistants, where's the nearest law firm nearby and talking to Facebook, you want to be up there at the top. And to do that, basically, you have to, number one, make sure that your profile is 100% complete and really approach it with the attitude of, I want mine to be significantly better than everybody else's. So that's everything from pictures and then maybe even developing a strategy there for how you're going to post. But reviews are a big one too. So, reviews, it's so easy to review a business on Facebook, right? You just click the number of stars, you can write something real quick. So the more people that visit that, I feel that's going to have a big influence on where you're going to be showing up, because just like Google, Facebook wants to provide the user with the best user experience, and it makes sense to point them in the right direction towards businesses that are highly reviewed.
So this M service is obviously just launched in Silicon Valley, really, isn't it? There's a few testers using the service at the moment, but by the screenshots, it looks as if it's a chat-type service that people can chat to this virtual assistant for recommendations. But is that a good user experience? Chris, can you see that kind of virtual assistant service being used by the masses?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from my own personal experience, and it is, when you come to kind of personal assistance, I think you almost only can talk from your own personal experience as to how these are being used. It's an interesting one to kind of aggregate people's view on a personal assistant. But I'm an Android fan. I admit I've never used Siri. I haven't used Cortana. I haven't bothered to download another assistant. I have used Google Now, and I've used it by default, really, just because it's so easy to flick across to it, and because it kind of does present itself through notifications now and again. And it's not something I've ever. It's one of those needs that you never knew that you had, but it's kind of it's growing on me. You know, if you go traveling, you'll find that your itinerary and your flight details are contained in a potted card right there with one swipe from the home page, which is kind of useful. It's got all of your to-do items that are right there, so it's a very different kind of proposition to the much more push-based assistant that M and Siri are kind of proposing, and possibly Cortana as well. It's a much more passive, in the background. Here are some useful things potentially for your moment right now. So I've started to kind of warm to that as a concept. But really, you know, you have to have a look at M, because Facebook ultimately is cross-platform. People, you can download Google Now for Apple, but really, who's going to? You can download Cortana for both iOS and Android, but really, who's going to? And frankly, Google Now guys are not going to. Android fans are not going to start downloading Siri anytime soon. So both of the kind of the big players are hobbled by. I mean, Apple and Google are really hobbled by their platform device. Facebook is the only cross-platform assistant in this scenario, and it's one that people are using all the time. You know, it's part of the Facebook app. So I do see that they've got a huge opportunity there to kind of capture the push assistant market, whereas Google Now is not trying so far to really occupy that market. And in order to kind of make a difference in terms of the local businesses, well, it is about trying to get involved in some of the data sources for those assistants, and absolutely search is one of those. But increasingly, particularly, I mean, from my experience with Google Now, it pulls from a range of different apps which have cards on the system. So if you are part of a stock portfolio, or if you're on the to-do list, or if you have an app that has certain functionality, you can try and make yourself available there. So I don't know how you, besides, I mean, for small businesses maybe not so much, but to try and make sure that I think Google has an increasing amount for restaurants. It's got new facilities for aggregating pictures of food and menu items. That's now becoming part of the local search now. So it's about trying to make sure that you can populate as much of that ecosystem as possible.
So, Chris, based upon your experience of using Google Now, if you're selecting a restaurant on Google Now based upon results you've seen, what do you actually base your selection criteria on? Is it ratings and reviews? Is it distance from where you are, or just the type of food you're looking for?
So if it's on Google Now, all of that is done for you. It's only being proposed because it's high rating and local. So you're only given 3, because you can only fit 3 on the restaurant card. Right. So the only reason why you're going to use Google Now versus an in-depth look on maps is speed. If you are with a client and you need a restaurant to go to right now, and it says Jay Sheiky's is around the corner right now, and it's got two available seats, I'm going to push the button and go straight there. That is a major difference, because it's done all the calculation in the background, and it means that I don't stand there looking like a mug, waiting to get mugged, while I kind of start looking things up on Google Maps and generally sort of looking like a tourist.
So, Grant, do you prefer using search engines still, or are you moving towards using these kind of services as well?
I still use search, but obviously I think it's more like voice-based search. It's interesting what's happening with the M thing. I was really surprised that it was on Messenger. You know, of all the channels and all the things that Facebook actually have in the first place, I was quite surprised that all of a sudden Messenger to me was this thing there. You and me had a conversation, and I sent you some text, and you sent me some text back, and that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, it's going to be this virtual assistant that's going to pull in information from all over the shop. So I don't necessarily know if it's going to work or not. They've certainly got the platform, and I get you. You know that obviously, as you said, Facebook is an app that sits on everybody else's systems as well at the same time. Search. More and more people are just going to be voice-based at the end of the day. We can already see that, especially with millennials and things like that, and how they're actually searching stuff. It's a natural progression, and it does go back to the question we were talking about, should you be on Facebook? Well, if you're a business, you're going to have to either start advertising on Facebook if this if this sort of blows up, becomes very, very successful, you're going to have to orchestrate conversations about the products and the services that you actually talk about in the first place. So you then become locally based as well as people search these things. So obviously, the thing about M, nobody really knows about it because there's only a handful of 300 people, 200 people that actually have it at this moment in time. It'd be interesting to see how it works. And I'll also wonder whether Facebook might actually just create its own operating system at the end of the day. What happens if Apple and Google and Microsoft turn around at the end of the day and see this as a little bit of a threat as they start taking away the market share, from if more and more people use Facebook as well, especially this voice-based thing. So it's an interesting space. We speak to machines more than we ever did before. We used to be a little bit embarrassed about that kind of stuff. More and more people are actually very comfortable with it. It's a natural progression. It's got a long, long way to go. And currently at this moment in time, things like Siri are just awful. I spend more time swearing at Siri than ever get answers out of it.
So, Steve, it was interesting that Grant was saying that it was gravitating towards voice. That may or may not be something that the younger generation is comfortable with, because obviously a lot of people have grown up texting now, really, and using text on Facebook and whatever other social network they're on. Do you agree? Do you think things are gravitating towards voice, or do you think Facebook have got it right and it should be a text-focused virtual assistant?
Well, I think probably voice will be the way forward, but I don't know if you've ever seen the kind of there's a sketch on YouTube of Scottish guys stuck in a lift trying to use voice activation. So at the moment, until they kind of get over those barriers, in particular for people with kind of stronger brogue, so to say, text is definitely going to be the main thing that's going to be used. And I
think we should do a sketch of that YouTube at the moment. Or maybe not.
I feel like I'm on it now.
11.
11.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think text is going to be around for a long time as well, because again, it is something we're comfortable with, and yeah, I don't know, but voice is going to be the way forward. It's kind of what all the sci-fi movies in the 50s and 60s said it's going to be. So it's going to happen at some point. But I think text is definitely here to stay for a fair bit of time yet.
Poor Casey's wondering what we're talking about there.
A little bit, yeah.
So I mean, obviously it's down to accents and the fact that these virtual assistant devices can't necessarily recognise every dialect, every form of one word in the English language, let alone other languages. Do you think that's a barrier that that these services will cross fairly soon and be good at interpreting different accents?
Sorry, is that for myself?
Casey, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. That's interesting. I think even the English-based version, I have plenty of problems without an accent or based on what it's around. So it is going to continue to get better though. They're always developing these programs, but I say that, and then I recently upgraded my phone. I'm an iPhone user. And I actually do think it got worse, but I think that's related to my case, not my, not the software updates. But they have to overcome those barriers if they want to be serious about this, because something as simple as the case, again, not even being able to interpret that properly is made my adoption of it less already.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I mean,
I just want to have one other point there, which I think is really interesting, which is around the compression of the functionality of the assistant with the user interface, because as Grant was talking about there, people are getting much more used to talking to computers, but that removes the visual user interface that people and cues that people are used to using. And it means that people are speaking straight into the functionality. So the functionality of the products that people are using just by voice command, with no other visual cues to help prompt them and guide them around, leads to some very, very interesting UX issues. And I'd love to see how they start to kind of get played out. So it's not just, you could have a really amazing algorithm under the bonnet connected to all the data on Facebook, but if you can't allow a person or enable a person to steer their way through that morass of data and find the answer they want, then you've lost the game already.
I mean, it also is a cultural thing as well. I mean, I can quite imagine maybe people from parts of Scotland being comfortable shouting into their phone at a bus stop, but maybe not in London. So perhaps has to be different options. There has to be a text-based option, obviously, as well as voice. We'll see what will happen. But coming up, we're going to be talking about whether your business should be on Instagram or Pinterest, and why the lines might be blurring between marketing channels and what to do about it. But first of all, remember to tweet. We've got the hashtag TWIO, so all tweets we're going to be trying to read out. But I also want to say that next week I've got a special pre-recorded TWIO special, which is actually going to be on the travel industry. So SEO and content marketing in the travel industry. I've just recorded it already, actually, so that's going to be released next week instead of the normal live episode. So I've got guests on from Expedia, from Thomas Cook. I've got an SEO travel specialist on there as well, and we debate what's happening specifically in that industry. So if that's really of interest to you and relevant to you, then look out for that episode next week. But let's move on to the next topic, which is Instagram announced this week that they're going to be supporting non-square images. So will this persuade more businesses to be using the service? Casey, do you think that the Instagram formatting in the past has perhaps put businesses off from using the service?
I think definitely depending on the type of business, because even on the video side, if you're doing square videos, what I'm really excited about is widescreen videos coming back for that more cinematic approach. And some of the businesses that I work with have 10 times more engagement on Instagram than they do on Facebook. And so the ability to post that content that they've already created without formatting or changing, its original look and feel is a great thing in my mind.
Okay, and still with you, Casey, the businesses that you do talk to, which are using Instagram, why have they actually decided to use Instagram or focus on that rather than Pinterest, or do they use them both?
Well, they use them both, but in the scenario that I stated, it's because their audience is there. It's a specialty retail store that gears towards 13-year-olds to 30-year-olds, and that's where that audience is, and that's where they're hanging out. So the engagement alone is just building and like a snowball. Whereas on Pinterest, for that particular audience, also given that it's mostly male, they do Pinterest, but as far as engagement and engagement, yeah, just not very good.
So, Chris, last time you were on This Week in Organic, you actually said that Pinterest is a shopping list, and that was a great way of describing a lot of the functionality within there. Do you think that because of that, and because you can have actually links to images in Pinterest, generally it makes Pinterest more appealing for businesses to use?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Pinterest is about pinning image. Well, the original premise is about pinning images that you find as you're going through the internet. It's not. I mean, and the opposite is true of Instagram, where the original premise was about taking photos and showing people your world and allowing people to experience that. Obviously, the brands have entered the Instagram space and have started to blur it and make it look a little bit like Pinterest because they're taking pictures of their products. So along comes every brand and their dog taking a perfectly composed picture of their 3 products from their range that you should take when you're going fishing or whatever it happens to be. And that is a lot more down the shopping route. But I would hate for Instagram to lose its point of difference, not just because it's different, but also because it's more interesting, I think, or at least it's interesting in and of itself. Look, I am a fan of Pinterest. It absolutely has its role, but Instagram gives you glimpses into moments in a user's life in a way that Twitter and Facebook don't, because they're too post-rationalized. So in order to write a tweet or even a Facebook status update, you are going to have to go through the mental process of saying this is something I want to share and compose it in 140 characters or less, or maybe more in a Facebook, but still it's roughly about that amount. And I know that doesn't sound like a hard thing to do, but the whimsy that comes with pointing a camera at a sky that you find inspirational for that split second while you're waiting for your interview or something, gives you so much more narrative. There's so much more narrative in a picture, you know. It says 1,000 words and all of that. So I really like that premise, and I think it gives brands a very, if they can use it properly, and I think not just publishing and contributing to the noise, and there is absolutely a role for brands to play there, and absolutely, as Casey said before, if the audience is there already, it's quite interesting to find out which audience. It's quite hard to know which audiences are appropriate in Instagram. You can sometimes think you're doing the right thing and you're taking some great quality images, but nothing happens, and then you do something totally different, and suddenly the surfer crowd just sort of pile in there, and you didn't realize that was a big thing on Instagram, but suddenly you're famous for just it's in that state of immaturity at the moment where it can go and spin off in all sorts of different directions. So you just have to watch the birdie a little bit with Instagram. But I'm intrigued. I think there are so many ways in which they could kind of develop the platform to make it a lot more interesting and useful for brands, particularly the way they release data, because of the way that it gives you, as I say, this glimpse into someone's emotion, their mood, their intent in a given moment. I think if they could capture that through analytics and through data to allow a brand to play to anticipate the most appropriate role to them to play to somebody once they've taken that photo, then I think it would be a really, really interesting platform. As it is right now, I don't feel like they've really developed it hugely on from what it ever was, which was basically a photo sharing platform with some interesting kind of lightbox features.
Okay, so Pinterest more evolved in terms of a brand opportunity, but if a business does share photographs or like both networks, is it appropriate to actually try and be successful on both networks, or would it make better business sense to focus on one network and do a great job on one?
So I think Pinterest is about talking about your products, comparing them, putting them in context of other people's products or environments, and showing how they can be used, and it's a much more of a showroom. That's why I called it a shopping list. I think Instagram is a bit more about the brand, and you're able to convey a lot more about the emotion behind the brand, the brand promise, the anticipation potentially, and the personality. And those are two different sides of the marketing landscape that are equally valid and have their role. But those would be my go-to roles for those two different platforms.
Okay. And Grant, do you have any clients that are actively using Instagram and Pinterest? And
yeah, people mainly in the fashion industry and the travel industry, because they've got something beautiful to show.
And which one would you tend to focus on?
At this moment in time, be probably more Pinterest, but what's happening with Instagram now, obviously it's not just going to be a square photograph. Just to say that it's a commercially good idea to obviously be able to show landscape and other things. Tell me, I have no idea, why was Instagram always just on squares in the first place?
Well, it started as a mobile app, didn't it? So
was it not so that it could like copy the whole Polaroid thing? Was it like a stylistic thing when it first started? It was supposed to be Polaroid
vanity rather than a practical thing. The sheer fact is that obviously if you're an architect, a landscape, an artist, a designer, and you want to show something that's got some width to it,
yeah,
and you couldn't use Instagram before because you totally lost the story. It's just common sense that we've got to show things in the context that they're meant to be shown. So Instagram more businesses will obviously use it. Of course they will. And you're absolutely right. It'll be interesting to see how the Instagram audience develops as well. I think it's still relatively immature about where it is, and so they should see about where it goes and where Pinterest goes as well, because they've got a serious competitor in that. They did start from completely different reasons, but it's just going to be interesting to see how they actually evolve now that Instagram is going to be able to show you the same style of photograph, as in it's not just a square. You would have maybe just gone to Pinterest instead. And the point that Casey made was, if you've got an audience on either of these platforms, go get them. You have to use it.
So Steve, Grant said that fashion and travel were two sectors that if you were in those sectors, you should definitely be using one or both of those networks.
Hmm.
What about online educators? Can they use
Yeah, well, we've kind of we've dabbled with Pinterest. Like, is it the chief exec Ben Slimmerman, if I remember correctly? But he did a talk last year at the Next Web conference in Amsterdam, and that kind of really kind of brought me into Pinterest. But we tried a few unsuccessful campaigns, and when we realised our target audience just weren't using Pinterest, because in the main it's kind of 20 to 50-year-old guys. Since we've been doing the digital marketing courses, that's kind of changed a lot more to the female side. But Instagram has been a much easier way for us to kind of tell a story and kind of get a little bit of engagement as well. But it's still very much in the development stage of what we're doing. But Instagram definitely seems to be the platform where we're getting more kind of from it from a personal point of view of what we're able to do with it, but also what we're getting back from our students. And the students, that's where they seem to be and where they want to be as well, rather than being on Pinterest for us anyway.
Okay, I mean, I remember hearing quite recently an interview with an online marketer saying that he was just driving crazy amounts of traffic from these kind of services. So from a driving of traffic perspective, there's certainly a significant opportunity there. I think, Casey, I saw you nodding away there. Is that something you've experienced as well?
I'm sorry, what?
Have you been able to track in the past Instagram or Pinterest as a significant traffic driver to websites?
Absolutely. You know, Pinterest and Instagram in both cases, in just different scenarios. But you know, there's one furniture company we worked with, for example, putting a lot of their furniture on Pinterest and then linking to each of those products. We can actually track that a lot to conversions as well. So, and same with Instagram, just depending on what we're doing and if it gets the right pickup. But you absolutely get a big benefit from that, and you absolutely need to track that.
Mm. Okay.
Well, I was just going to say that something that actually happened to me was I was looking at a bit of furniture, and obviously it was quite expensive, quite large, and I've been looking at the website for literally about 9 months, and I didn't want to spend the money. The only image I ever saw of it was on the website itself, and somebody had a photograph of the wooden furniture, and they put it up on Pinterest, and I saw it in real life in somebody's house, and I went and bought it the next day. So it does work, because you're reaching. You know, it's another way of showing your product out. And obviously, this was a brand fan. This was somebody that bought the furniture, really liked it, took a photograph in real light, in real context. And you can actually see how big the wardrobe was in comparison to everything else within the room. And that was enough for me. I actually saw it in a real life scenario and conversion.
Okay, so if you sell furniture online on an e-commerce site, is it video or images, or is it important to have them both? Are they different things?
I think they both play a purpose, and I would have bought that furniture a lot months earlier. I had actually just seen it more than just the studio shots that I had actually on the website. So obviously video works well, and you can see things from different angles. And in this case, this was somebody that actually bought the furniture and wanted to show the world, look at my beautiful furniture. It was enough for me to buy it as well. So there you go. It clearly works.
And Chris, were you about to jump in there, or someone
No,
else?
I was going to reinforce that point. I think the clear message is there is no limit. You can't get enough good imagery of a product. If it's a beautiful product, then just put as many. I mean, obviously you need to when you've got it on Amazon, you've got 8 images or 8 thumbnails, whatever. You know, there are limits to what you can put. But if you have the opportunity to show or share images from users, either user generated or from yourselves, you know, this image in different contexts, you just can't put enough, and video and imagery should be there available. I mean, it is the thing that retailers find the hardest to do, is to present their images just in the first place. I mean, particularly when you're talking about furniture, it's expensive to get big furniture into a studio and to take a nice shot once and then to move on. But to have it in so many different contexts, against different backgrounds, with different events maybe happening in front of it, it's just too expensive to do that. So if other people are prepared to do that for you, my God, definitely get them in front of, get them on the page, get them shared, and try and kind of draw attention to them. Absolutely.
That's a great point. Actually, you have as many images as possible from as many different angles as possible. Because I was looking at more microphones recently, because I like microphones.
We noticed. Thanks for the like, by the way.
Grant likes furniture, I like microphones. But I was wanting to see a picture underneath this microphone to see what kind of connections it had, and I wasn't comfortable making a purchase decision without seeing it from all angles, and I'm sure people are like that about whatever item they're buying. So if you can provide a photograph from all angles, then I think the conversion is more likely.
So, David, have you been caught in shops lying on your back looking at microphones?
Have you seen the CCTV? Have you?
He's lying down now.
I think this is a good time to move on to another topic.
Okay.
So the last topic is Kai Crow published an article on Marketing Prof yesterday called "Why Apple Watch Rings the Death Knell of the Mobile Marketing Channel." It's a dramatic headline, but in the article Kai says that what the watch does represent is the blurring of lines between what have traditionally been seen as different channels by marketers. So this is a very pertinent point. Many marketing teams are split into specialist teams that don't really understand what other teams do. Is there a more effective structure for large marketing departments in the future? Casey, do you think that marketers, no matter what their specialist discipline, need to be starting to be more aware of other departments?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen in the 10 years that I've been in the industry. And then still, I think we're at the surface of that, because you're running into businesses, for example, that, okay, we have an organic SEO guy or somebody working on local SEO, and they're really in that mindset, and then they may not be thinking about other channels that actually do have overlap. And that's everything from text messages, for example, text marketing, and then email marketing. All of those channels need to be connected, and everything you're participating in should be part of a broader plan as well. So our jobs are shifting to more overlap to a lot of these areas, because I work with small businesses, for example, that may not have big budgets, but they're interested in showing up on Google, something very basic, and they just say, okay, well, we want to rank on Google, and that's all we're doing for marketing, and they're not tying these other things together, and that just creates a huge loss of opportunities for remarketing or reaching your customers through different channels, or just collecting that information, that data. So yeah.
It's intriguing, because I started off in digital marketing maybe about 10 years ago or so, and there wasn't so many areas of digital then, and you could quite easily just call yourself an internet marketer or a digital marketer and do everything. But then it moved to an era where there was so much going on. The general perception was, well, it's impossible to know everything about everything. Focus on one area, do one area really well. But now the fact that you do have knowledge in other areas is actually quite beneficial, and you can understand what your specialist or how your specialism interacts with other areas out there. Chris, do you think that it's going to be a real challenge to get, for example, pay-per-click specialists to start to understand how what they're doing impacts other areas of marketing?
So I agree with what you're saying entirely. I think the era of specialism is over, and it will be over even more so the more that automation starts to take its grip on the marketing world, particularly the paid marketing world. It doesn't pay these days to be the bloke who only knows about that thing anymore. Clients are looking for, and they have said this time and time again to me, they want a team, they want people who are, you call it maybe a derogatory phrase, but jacks of all trades. They need to be able to think in several different digital dimensions at the same time. They want mixed skill set teams, ideally with data right in the middle, and then with content and brand strategy around about, so that that team can take a concept that's happening and spin it 360 and be pretty much on any channel. They need to be channel agnostic. The really important variables that we need to dial up these days in digital marketing teams is the timeliness and their ability to handle different channels. So more and more it seems to me that the channel plan is a total anachronism. Coming back to a client with a plan where there's this much budget on SEO, this much, but before the campaign's even started, I mean, pretty much from day two, that whole plan is out of the water. People should be mixing things up, seeing what's worked, trying. I mean, the agile marketing framework is what should be replacing that, so that we do one thing for a week, we move on to the next thing. We know that some things are more slow burning, such as the organic stuff. We understand that, and but the good ideas that happen in paid should sink to the bottom line of the sustainable on organic routes, so that they can be built out and established over time. And these are the sensible ways in which to work. Unfortunately, there are still ways and structures and contracts and planning departments that are operating, and in fact, actually, the way that budgets are crafted around campaigns force people into these false peaks, whereas we know that this is an always-on world where the good stuff rises to the top, and what's bad just gets ditched fast, and that is the way that things should move, or the way that things should be structured, and also collaborating with the client. You know, the more we start using first-party data, i.e., client data, the more, rather than third-party data, the more that the power is swinging towards the client, and it should be. This is their product, their sector. They know what they're doing. What they need is the tools and the brains to help them move as fast as they need to move. And it doesn't pay for a client to have a lot of kind of quite expensive jacks of all trades sitting around twiddling their thumbs and waiting for the great thing to happen. They need to be able to switch that on quickly when it's going down. And that sort of agile mentality is where we're going. Nobody is really there yet, and not often a lot of clients are ready to handle that yet, because it does mean that you can't go home at 5 o'clock and assume that your work is done. It carries on. It's a dangerous place to be, but that is the way that sort of brand digital marketing is going.
So, I mean, Grant, traditionally in a lot of businesses there has been friction between departments, operations, finance, or marketing and sales. Do you not think that, within marketing it's kind of the same, and that traditionally there's friction between pay-per-click and SEO, just to pick two for an example, and it's always been the case where pay-per-clicks try and keep the budget for themselves and try and justify bidding on everything even though it's number one in organic, and vice versa. SEO is trying to say the opposite story.
I think the industry's grown up a lot since then. Yes, I've been in huge with clients, big banks, and he said, who does your PPC? And women sneered, says, that bitch over there, and she was pointing to the other side of the room. There's always going to be an element of that, but I think the industry has grown up a little bit along those lines. As far as specialisms go, we're still always going to need them, but a specialist is better when they have a greater awareness about what they do in context with everything else, about when you turn it on, when you turn it off. Exactly what we're talking about with paid search, and the point we were talking earlier about when you're day two into the contract, and by that time you've actually worked out about what you should be doing, rather than giving these buckets from procurement that says this is paid, this is organic, this is content, this is analytics. I think we have to be far more flexible about what we do and when we do it as well. However, I do fear I think the great pay-per-click guys that know every single tactical trick in the book, if they should still focus their energies on that at the end of the day, as they understand whatever paid search is and programmatic and how all these things work together. They should still absolutely focus their time on that, but just be aware of how organic search works, or how analytics work, or how tagging works, and how social media works with these things as well. So it is becoming very, very blurred. But even another opportunity is obviously content has been very, very popular over the past couple of years, but now content is blurring into native. Native is just like a paid advertising medium at the end of the day. So who is it? Is it the content team, or is it the paid media team who are going to start looking after your native advertising for you? So the lines are, again, absolutely blurred. I still believe in specialists, except they have to be far more aware of when they use their tactical expertise and how it aligns their expertise with everything else that's going on around them as well.
So, Steve, Grant still believes in specialists, but is that just specialists at maybe the bottom and middle levels, and is it necessary for upper management to be generalists? What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, to be honest, from a kind of brand side, I've kind of always worked in really kind of small marketing teams, and certainly when I joined the Learning People 4 years ago, it was just myself, so you kind of had to be a jack of all trades. And funnily enough, I remembered a kind of old boss of mine who used to have this really great, or really bad motivation tactic of shouting at people while doing impersonation of them, and called me a jack of all trades. But in reality, though, that's been a benefit really, because as much as you can, for a good bit of time, I was thinking, should I be a specialist? But my interests kind of go across that kind of T-level marketing side of things, and even as we've grown as a team now, we have a mighty team of 3 people. We do specialise in our own little areas, but we have to be kind of across the board enough to know what each of us are doing, so we can kind of rely on people when, if someone's off, but also, importantly, everyone has ownership of the brand themselves. And everyone feels that they have their kind of little piece of the jigsaw that they kind of add to it as well. So for us, it definitely makes sense to have people who know what they're doing in specialist areas, but be very sympathetic towards what's going elsewhere, and maybe, the content marketer has some Photoshop skills and can help out on the design side. The coder similarly can then do Facebook posts and all that side of things as well. But it's for us, it does definitely makes it a happier working environment if people are across the spectrum a little bit more than possibly what you guys have been saying they have been in the past. And it just means people are empowered and they've got an ownership of what's actually happening as well.
Yeah, I think that T-shaped description says it very well, certainly for someone who wants to be a real digital marketing professional in the future.
Yeah. Can I just say, David? I mean, the question, as I understand it, was blurs itself. Actually, I mean, it talks about channels, but actually, the reference that you made was to devices. It was talking about the Apple Watch, and obviously the difference being that a channel is kind of a content medium, and a device is the hardware platform that carries the content. And I think that the point being made by Kai is that the Apple Watch rings the death knell of the mobile marketing channel, or the death knell of the wearable as a mobile channel, and I think that's interesting in and of itself. I think people think as we start to get more wearable. I mean, the mobile isn't a wearable device, but it's on your person. When you start to use wearables, woe betide you trying to kind of put a brand awareness message on somebody's watch in the middle of a meeting. The closer you get to being on someone 24/7, being part of their life, the less permission you have to run brand awareness kind of messages. However, it is much more appropriate to use the device to gather data that is useful to create alerts and notifications that are much more appropriate for maybe brands to adopt. So you can be much cleverer because you know that somebody's outside, you know the mood they're in, you can maybe drop a little bit of content, you can maybe have a small notification which makes you come across as useful rather than disruptive. And so I think it's not necessarily the death knell of it as a marketing channel, but perhaps as an advertising opportunity, then frankly, good riddance.
Right. Okay. No, it's a lot to think about there within the comments you just made there, and to me, it was all about you have to be exceptionally careful about advertising or about reaching out to people at the wrong time, and if you do that, then you can expect to never hear from that person again, from that person to actually unsubscribe from anything you do in the future.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes made. No, it will be, as wearables come in and all of a sudden we're using near field connection technologies, and all of a sudden it says, I know it's raining, and I know you've looked at this and looked at that. It's very intrusive. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the wearable space. And Kai's article was sensationalist, the headline of it, but it does actually have quite an interesting point, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the content within the article that certainly pulled my attention. Great. Okay. Well, I reckon that just about takes us to the end of this week's show. So just time for a single takeaway and some sharing and find out more details from our guests. So shall we start off with Casey?
Sure, yeah. So again, my name is Casey Mraz from Denver, from Juris Digital, and I really think that the big takeaway that really has me, what I'm thinking about right now, is how these devices, these wearable devices, are really going to impact marketing and how we can take advantage of that. So definitely a lot more thinking to do there, and making sure that those are integrated even in our own channels. So
Lovely. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, Casey, and moving on to Chris.
Yeah, no, it's been great again. Thank you, David, for inviting me on. My takeaway, I think I need to go away and think a little bit more like an SME and think about the effort that it takes to go and carry out your own social media and what actually you can guarantee will work to drive business for you. I think it's pretty cut and dried that is it's got to deliver, and I'm not sure that we can hand on heart say that we always do for some of the bigger brands who don't necessarily have to with everything that they do.
I think that's great thinking as well. I think there's a lot that SMEs can learn from big organizations, but likewise there is a lot that big companies can learn from SMEs, yeah. And Grant as well.
What did I take away from today? Well, it was great fun, as usual. I would really like the conversation about the blurring the lines there at the end there. I think where the potential is going, when we start talking about what SEO guys and PPC guys, where we're actually going with a wearable conversation, we used to say that we're now going to be talking about above the line advertising, and that is a proper transitional jump. There used to be traditional advertising and digital marketing. The wearable device is the first point where advertisers or the advertising industry will have to be fuse these two polar parts absolutely together, and the wearable device is the one thing that's going to actually make that happen. And from a skill set, from a digital marketing agency point of view, this is the first time that above the line advertising and digital marketing and near field connection technology can all come together. So I can totally understand about what Kai's article was about, and it's just opened a brand new channel of above the line advertising and digital marketing, how these two things go together. Interesting times.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Grant, and also Steve.
Yeah, for me, it would be the kind of the blurring of the lines, the specialisms that we have in digital marketing now. Essentially, it's kind of a really exciting future ahead for digital marketers, and to have my kind of learn people hat on, kind of one of the best ways to kind of keep ahead of that game is to kind of get yourself certified with some digital marketing courses with the learning people.
Great takeaway.
There we go.
And I'm David Bain, Head of Growth at analyticsseo.com, and you can also catch me interviewing online marketing gurus over at digitalmarketingradio.com. Now, if you're watching the show as a recording, remember to watch the next episode live, so head over to thisweekinorganic.com and sign up to watch the next show in real time. But for those of you watching live, we've also got a podcast on iTunes, so just go directly to that at thisweekinorganic.com/iTunes. And remember to continue sharing your thoughts using the hashtag TWIO on Twitter, so just the 4 letters TWIO. But until then, have a fantabulous weekend, and thank you all for joining us. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for being part of it.